F1 shocking news. Big changes at Team McLaren. Zak Brown of McLaren claims that the high-spending Formula One teams are holding the sport hostage. While there is a bit of restlessness in the McLaren team, and the team is not satisfied with the strategic planning. We all know about the F1 product, so what if we tell you there's a little bit of a problem going on behind the scenes? Welcome back to Formula One News. Today, we'll be talking about all the big changes taking place at Team McLaren, so make sure you don't go anywhere. The fun is about to begin. Without any delay, let's dive into the video, and make sure you please hit that bell icon and subscribe to the channel to get every single update from our channel. So, according to Zak Brown, who is the CEO of McLaren Racing, the present Formula One product has a lot of problems that are happening behind the scenes that need to be fixed. Large spending clubs lobbying against the budget cap is one of the challenges that the sport's now experiencing. Another challenge is that the teams have too much influence. In a recent outburst that he posted on the McLaren website, Brown also made some disparaging comments about the behavior of some of his competitors when they were competing. Even though the Formula One off-season has not yet begun, McLaren Racing CEO Zak Brown has already staked his claim on a few subjects that are sure to be a major discussion point during the 2022 season. Brown elaborated on long-held issues in an open letter that was released on the website of McLaren Racing. The article detailed Brown's displeasure with competitor teams' attempts to bend financial laws that were established in 2021. Formula One's about to enter year 2 of its cost cap, which is currently set at $140 million. Despite the fact that there are several exemptions, the cost cap has been set at this amount, and an additional $1 million will be added to each event if the season has more than 21 races. This indicates that the cost cap will likely increase to $142 million in 2022. Brown believes that certain teams are attempting to distort the economic balance by using the new structure for the sprint qualification race that will be implemented in 2021 as an excuse. This year, the number of qualifying races for the sprint will increase from 3 to 6. Brown stated that there are some teams that are still attempting to win world championships with checkbooks, and that these teams are continuing to demand a raise to the cost cap by an inordinate amount of money, despite the clear evidence that little damage was incurred during these sprint races last year. Brown added that this is happening despite the fact that there's clear evidence that there was very little damage sustained during these races in the previous year. Brown stated that it is a thinly veiled attempt to protect from their competitive advantage being eroded, and that these teams seem unable to accept that a budget cap is in the best interest of the sport and cannot kick their habit of spending their way to the front. The existing governing structure of the sport allows for a situation in which some teams, in order to maintain their own competitive advantage, are basically holding the sport hostage from what is best for the fans, and consequently, what's best for the sport as a whole. 2 months before the first race of the 2022 season, Formula One has not yet provided a detailed explanation of the organization of Sprint or the financial ramifications that are related to it. Brown also restated an opinion that he has held for a long time regarding the close links between various teams. According to Brown, these relationships give certain large companies an excessive amount of influence both on and off the track. McLaren is supplied by Mercedes power units, but maintains control over its own components and design. In contrast, fellow Mercedes customers Aston Martin and Williams use more components acquired from Mercedes. This practice is permitted under Formula One's regulations and is referred to as using non-listed parts. Both Ferrari and AlphaTauri rely substantially on Red Bull Racing because the Energy Drink Corporation owns both of the racing teams. Ferrari has a similar connection with Haas, while AlphaTauri relies heavily on Red Bull Racing. Brown bemoaned the fact that the danger of A and B teams has not gone away, and that the existing regulations are heavily tilted towards B teams, which is not in keeping with the idea that F1 adheres to, which is that a group of real constructors compete with one another on level terms. To put it succinctly, the existing setup makes it possible for B teams to be over-competitive in comparison to constructors, and it makes it possible for A teams to be over-competitive by having the advantage of a B team. If nothing is done to change the current state of affairs, it follows that any team that wants to compete for the title would need to field a second car, which is not the case in Formula One. In addition to this, the A teams put voting pressure on their B teams, which is not compatible with the promotion of a sport that is based on the individual merits of each team and is intended to be egalitarian. As I've mentioned in the past, and despite the fact that these teams refuse to acknowledge it, there are instances when certain lesser teams vote against their own interest in order to suit the agenda of their A team. Brown also chimed in on the issue surrounding the title-deciding 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix for Formula One, which is presently being investigated by the regulatory body known as the FIA. Brown's comments may be seen here. Brown believes that there are systemic concerns that need to be addressed in the long term, despite the fact that he is aware of the problems caused by the conclusion. According to Brown, the symptoms of organizational issues may be observed at the 2020 Australian Grand Prix and at last year's Belgian Grand Prix. Both of these races were characterized by an apparent lack of preparation for the events that were unfolding and temporary paralysis of the solutions. As things now stand, it was very evident that some norms in the government governing of them cannot be tolerated. The inconsistent enforcement of the restrictions is a source of frustration for everyone involved, but it is something that teams have routinely used to their advantage in order to gain a competitive edge. I have stated in the past that there is an imbalance of power between the teams and that it has to be addressed. Formula One gives us a large amount of power in the development of the regulations and in the governance of the sport, but that influence is not necessarily based on what is best for the sport as a whole. Yes, teams should be engaged, and their knowledgeable viewpoint should be taken into consideration, in particular when dealing with long-term strategic challenges. However, there have been instances when it has appeared like particular teams controlled the sport. Let us not forget that the anomalies in the policing of the regulations have been contributed to just as much by us, the teams, as they have been by anybody else. The teams were the ones that put the most pressure on officials to find a way to conclude the races without using the safety car. It was the teams themselves that voted for many of the restrictions that they have since complained about, the author writes. When it comes to complaining about in-race judgments made by the stewards and the race director, Brown also took a dig at the behavior of some of his competitors who competed against him on race day. It is the teams that have been exploiting the broadcasting of radio communications to the race director to attempt to influence penalties and the results of the race, he added, to the point where an overly enthused team principal plays to the gallery and presses race authorities. Formula One has not benefited from this in any way. It has at times seemed more like an audition for a farce than the apex of a global sport. The chief executive officer at McLaren, Zak Brown, dropped a hint that Daniel Ricciardo does in fact have a contract with the company until 2023, but there are ways to get out of that deal sooner if the 32-year-old driver continues to underperform this season. As a matter of fact, there's no assurance that Daniel Ricciardo would continue to compete for the team in 2023 because the contract has a stop provision that may be activated. Furthermore, it was hinted that McLaren would even study the prospect of Ricciardo racing for another team. So, I guess that's the end of this video. And we would like to ask you to like the video as well as subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon so you never miss any updates. If you have any questions or comments on your mind, please let us know in the comment box. And also make sure you check out our channel where you'll find some more really cool stuff.